Uh, Let me start with saying something about myself. And maybe later on you can tell me something about yourself. But, I've been in the field of education for many, many years, long before most of you were born. So professionally, I have a PhD. सुन सकते हैं?
Yes.
Professionally, I have a degree in comparative education and curriculum from the University of Wisconsin in the USA. I'm also a certified English teacher in America, high school English teacher. I then came back to India 40 years ago, almost. Taught at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And now most of my students are just retiring from various colleges of social work. They are retiring from foundations, heads of foundations, etc. But after I taught for about seven or 8 years at Tata Institute, I wrote a book on elementary education in India. Oh, incidentally, my focus is elementary education, pre-primary education. So after that, I started an NGO in Pune called Center for Learning Resources. It has been working for about 40 years. Some of you, whether you are in Nandurbar or wherever you are coming from in Pune or in Maharashtra, may have heard our program, Ami Ingreji Sikto. We learn English. That is our center's program. इसके बाद में कुछ बातचीत बाद में करेंगे. But my entire professional life has been spent, quarter of my life in research and working with policy, with various policy, national committees, state committees, ऐसे कुछ. And the rest of my life, 30 or more years, spent implementing programs in municipal schools, Zilla Parishad schools, tribal schools, ashrams, ashram hostels, and working from birth, with parents of birth to 3, pre-primary age, Anganwadi, Balwadi, 3 to 6, and from 6 to 14 in elementary education. Most of these 40 years, हमारा संस्था we have been working in these areas. I'm going very slowly because I realize I'm speaking in English and I'm just hoping to communicate. Unlike Matthew and Anthony, I don't dare to speak in Hindi, and neither can I speak in Marathi or in Malayalam, or Gujarati, all of which I understand perfectly well, but would feel extremely embarrassed to say anything. So these are apart from my many other handicaps, these are a few of them. So I have. Maybe I have to go a little slowly because I have to take a little more time.
Time is there.
Right?
And we will also summarize.
I will take a little more time.
Yeah.
And I have to go with this autobiography a little bit so they understand. But let me say, what I have tried to do, and this is something which I would like you to think about, is try and see the link between what policy says and practice. And in my case, and it should be in your case, how can your practice inform policy? See, those who are in practice, all right, if somebody is making policy, ये मेरा काम नहीं है, ये उनका काम ही है, सरकार का काम है, या सरकार and expect or the people, उनका काम है. We are only workers with NGOs working with the public. And the people who are in policy making say, we are in policy making, and there are those people there whose job is to implement the policy. Now, I am saying there is a very important need for this dialogue and for this relationship between policy and practice. And I will only say that I don't want to go into examples over here. I have been on various national, international committees, etc. All right, and I have seen how much my experience in the field, in Anganwadis, observing Malwadis, observing teachers in tribal schools, observing teachers, young people learning English, all right, and observing the impact of our radio program all over India, also in northern states, in Maharashtra, elsewhere. I have seen how much my experience has affected my contributions to policy, and I have seen how much my understanding of policy has affected what we did in our Center for Learning Resources, and what our center was planning to do in the future. So this relationship is very important. और अभी मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ कि यहाँ कितने लोग ये national policy पढ़ा हुआ है? आप raise your hand please. Who has read? All right. So most of you have not read. So I'll have to go even slower. So let me start. So this is the title, and the title unpacking is a very big word. Alright? जैसे आप unpack करते हैं, जब suitcase unpack करते हैं, कपड़े निकालते हैं, ये वो निकालते हैं, ये सिर्फ मेरा ये है सिर्फ analyzing the policy. पॉलिसी में क्या है और इसका इश्यूज क्या है और recommendations क्या है. और I have very different recommendations. All right, at the end we can discuss it, and we will. Now, the draft NYP. I keep confusing NEP, the National Education Policy, because I used to keep a blog on the National Education Policy. I have written on the National Education Policy. I've been on some committees for National Education Policy. So my mind, because my whole life has been with this group and not youth. Incidentally, I'm almost a newcomer to this group of youth, because it's only 5-6 years ago, apart from हमारा संस्था यूथ के साथ थोड़ा कुछ काम करते थे. एक प्रोग्राम था called युवा इंग्लिश, and that was for youth, only program of our center, which was with youth from 15 and above, those who are, and for people, youth who are studying. So it was to give this youth some basic knowledge of English. That was the only work I've done with youth. All of you young people have many more years of experience with youth. The only reason why I have become interested in youth is 5 years ago I started writing a report on the education of Muslims in India. And I have come to realize very late in my life, quite late in my professional life, which is not yet over, that if we are talking about the uplift of any disadvantaged community, जो कुछ community जो आपको बनाने का है, जो especially जो disadvantaged है, या scheduled caste होगा, या scheduled tribes होगा, या Muslims होगा, आपको जानना चाहिए कि सबसे disadvantaged अभी है Muslims. You may not know it, but this is, I have spent 5 years researching that area. So my understanding now is that if you want to uplift any community, you have to work with children from birth to 3, from 3 to 6, those who are in school and those who are in college, and the larger group of youth from 15 to 29, which is outside all of this. So you have to work from birth to 29 years. All these areas have their own contributions to make, and you may be surprised to know that whatever you do in the birth to 3 has a direct influence on earnings of adults. There is work to show. The person who won a Nobel Prize in economics has shown that the birth to 3 age group has a very important influence on adult life. And that if you have 100 rupees to spend on any of those 4 areas, the most important area to focus is on birth to 3. All right, it is a surprising, and that does not mean only health and nutrition. It means something else. So now I'll come back to the new education, the new youth policy, the national youth policy, the 221 national youth policies. There was a national youth policy in 2014, and this is the next one, which has a 10-year vision, 2020 to 2030. And like Matthew was saying, it has 5 areas: education, employment and entrepreneurship, youth leadership and development, health, fitness and sport, and social justice. 5 areas. And underneath all of this is the whole idea that to focus on marginalized sections. That is, disadvantaged groups. Okay, focus. ये सब 5 areas में हमारा focus एक जो disadvantage है इस पर होने चाहिए. Or why only 6 people may have read it is because it was released in April 2022, the 2021 the National Youth Policy, and in 3 months the comments were closed down. Or what is the status of it? We have no understanding. Next. Now, जब कुछ issues or recommendations बनाने चाहिए, then the question to be asked is, most important question, what should this national youth policy, draft policy, what should the roadmap for youth development be? Alright? That is वो है fundamental issue and question. और ये subdivision है, अलग 5 subdivisions है. So, what is the NYP seeks to achieve in those 5 priority areas जो मैं पहले बताया, education, health, education, employment, civic participation, social justice. What does it seek to achieve by 2030 and why? Now, and what are the schemes, etc. Now, let me say, if you have read it, I think it's 128 pages or something, whatever. 128-page document is full of that first one. What are the areas? क्या करने चाहिए? Why should we be doing it? Every possible detail is there. Next, where is India's youth in these areas and where we should be by 2030? Baseline data and 2030 targets with data. By baseline data, हम कहाँ हैं अभी? और 10 साल में कहाँ होने चाहिए? Now, if you read the NEP, some of you may have read the National Education Policy, you will see that in all these NEP documents, they have literacy rates, for instance, enrollment rates, and everything. In the NYP, there is no data. There are 2 tables in the entire 128-page document. So it is like having an education document, all right, where you do not have any literacy figures on India, all right, and then you can say India is a very literate country, all right. It is the highest literacy rate. How will, if somebody says that, how do you know it is not the highest literacy rates in the world? You only know that if you have data, statistics, which says what is India's literacy rates. What are the literacy rates of other countries? Is India higher than all the other countries? Or is it lower than some countries? You will only know any of those figures when you have data. Next, what are the main opportunities and challenges in all 5 priorities and how? So, what are the main issues that we have to deal with? In the national education policy, I'll give you an example. One priority area is learning. And to support learning, quality of learning. They are saying that India's learning of our children are very low, and they support it with reference to NCERT data, and it's supported with reference to ASAR data. That is, you are saying we are here in terms of our priority area of learning, and we want to go there, and we have data for that. Third, how will we meet the needs of disadvantaged youth? Okay, SC, ST, Muslims, other groups, disabilities, whatever the groups that you are looking, and how will we have supporting data for this? Now, while some groups are identified, there is no data saying why do we consider these people disadvantaged. In the NEP, the draft NEP, not the NEP, the draft NEP, there are figures for SC, ST in terms of enrollment. There are even figures for Muslims showing that they are lowest among minority groups. All right. And that is the basis for all discussion. So, and then finally, detailing the process of making the initial draft and what will be happen, the next steps. At the present moment, I have no idea whether we will have another draft NEP, like the NYP, the National Youth Policy, like the NEP. The NEP has taken 5 years, and it has taken quite a few drafts, all right, to make it. But that process is also transparent. If you read the draft NEP, there's a whole section devoted to 5 साल पहले क्या हुआ, क्या था पहले, शुरुआत क्या था, how many people participated in the discussion to make the draft, how many meetings were there, where these meetings were held, who was involved in this. In this document, you do not know who is the author, you do not know what is going to happen, or anything like this. It is, अंग्रेज में words है, it is an opaque document, right? क्या बता सकते, घूंघट डाला है इसके ऊपर, नहीं देख सकते घूंघट के पीछे क्या है, कौन है, वो सब अलग बात है. Okay, so we don't have that. So, if you want to know what the situation of youth in India is and how does it compare to anything else, you have to go to foreign publications to understand this. The reason why I have become an instant expert on youth in India, overnight expert on youth in India, is because I knew which foreign publications to read. Alright? So, and the publication that you should read if you want to know where youth is in India, if you are interested in that kind of question, alright? And how does it compare with youth in other countries? Very important to know. We are not a little island, isolated from any other country. Like in Maharashtra, like it's saying, Maharashtra is not isolated from Orissa or from Madhya Pradesh or from Kerala. We are all part of a country, and then we are also part of a very small world. Right now, we are very. I mean, this is the age I can pick up a phone and speak to someone in China, if you are allowed to. But that's a different story. But I can. So, my point, the final document which I have explained is the draft NYP only deals with the first one and in detail. If you want to know the schemes, if you want to know how that the schemes are working, if you want to know that progress is being made in here, there, there is bharpur comments in detail. But on the other four questions, we have no idea, and we have to accept or not accept the optimistic statements made in the National Youth Policy Draft. Next. Now, I would advise you to all to read this. All right, this is a very good report, the Global Youth Development Report. I think the 2020 came out last year or this year. It tracks the youth progress in education, employment and opportunity, health and well-being, political and civic participation, equality and exclusion, peace and security. It is almost the same as our draft National Youth Policy. Those areas are almost identical. Almost. Unlike our National Youth Policy, it gives quantitative data, that is statistics, figures, numbers, with reference to 181 countries, including India. I am extremely surprised why our National Youth Policy could not supply the figures from India when an international document can provide it. I have my own reasons for why statistics के पीछे क्या है, no statistics के पीछे क्या है, that's a separate issue. But India is full of conspiracy theories, and I don't want to add to one more. Next one. There's a Youth Development Index score which ranges from 0 to 1 for each country ranking. And then there is an overall YDI, Youth Development Index score, in all 6 areas and a country ranking. Next. Education. When you look at education, out of 181 countries, India is 119th. It is far lower than China, and expected far lower than USA, but better than Pakistan, but lower than Indonesia. See, the reason why I've chosen these 4 countries is like, I didn't want to choose Singapore. Singapore is number 1. All right, I could have put Singapore. But I thought we should compare youth in countries which are large in size. And China got larger than us. The next 3 countries, Pakistan, Indonesia, USA, are the next 3 largest countries. So that is why I have selected only these 5 countries to give an idea where amongst countries with large populations, where does India fare? And all these indexes, this 0.7, 0.83, are made up, the education index is made up of 3 indicators: literacy rate of youth, school completion rate of youth, and digital experience of youth, 15 to 20. All this is to do with literacy rate of youth, etc. Alright? So it is a combined figure. They take into account statistics for all of them and combine it to get 0.7, 0.83, and then you look at how do each country rank with each other. Next one. This employment and opportunity rank position of India is 139. It is extremely low compared to China and USA. Matthew was just now talking about youth dividend, right? And if you read the papers, every now and then people are talking about India's youth dividend. That means, what does it mean? India has a very large youth population. And that is actually a big plus when you have a large youth population, because it can add to the economic and social development of a country when you have a large youth population. China's youth population expanded, and it was one of the reasons why its economy grew, but there are many other important reasons. But one important reason was it had a large youth population. Now the youth population in China is decreasing, alright, which means less people to work, and the old age population is correspondingly increasing. That means a youth population, a smaller youth population and working population will have to take care of a much older population. Health, food, etc. This is the problem with aging, decreasing youth population and aging youth populations. Whereas India has a dividend, but that dividend is going to end in 3 decades, when our youth population will start decreasing, and we have already an increasing aging population. That means we will have to, all of you people will have to take care of people like me, your parents, your grandparents, and others. Alright, all these young people in the age group. Now, the point about this is that there is no, you can have a youthful population, but you should have employment and opportunities. And India ranks 139 out of 181 countries. We rank very low in employment and opportunities for youth. So, it is all very well saying we have a youth population, but we must provide jobs and employment. And you are well aware, for every so many jobs, how many lakhs of people sometimes are now applying, and the riots that occur, recently because of that army, the new rules for army entry, etc.
And railways.
And almost any job, for every one job there are at least over 10,000 people applying. So the point about having a youthful population must be you must judao this with opportunity, and you must judao this with creation of jobs and creation of manufacturing jobs. This creation of high level digital jobs only helps certain people in the economy, certain groups of youth, but not the kind of youth that you are working with. Next. Health and well-being. I think I'll go quicker now, okay, because I need to get to the more important things. 101, and India is doing reasonably well, but not as well as China or Indonesia. Next. Political and civic participation. Here India does very comparatively well, except with relationship to Indonesia, which is number 1. Alright? And so we have, and the next.
See, here there is a problem. They have only considered voting.
No.
Therefore, they are showing is better. Because this many youth are getting into voting, their rights are used. So they have a political
Wait, let me be very simple. I didn't want to spend time. There are 4 indicators for political and civic participation. Okay, and it's nothing to do with voting. It is what percentage of you engage in youth policy and legislation, voicing an opinion to an official. Third, volunteering time for youth work. And fourth, recognition for community improvement. That is why I am urging you, read this report, because it will also give you some ideas of what kinds of work and what kinds of statistics do you need to look at if you are talking about political and civic participation. We should not confuse political and civic participation with only the ability to vote. I know that you are meaning much more, but I am only saying that this indicator, this has is index which looks at 4 indicators.
I can just give a clarification.
Yeah.
When they did this a year ago, 2019, they separated politics and civic participation. When they did in the previous survey, political engagement was a different indicator, civil participation was a different. In the civil participation, all these indicators were strong. Now they have merged both and voting as more properly a political issue.
So this is the. But I see. When somebody new comes into a field, you only read the latest document. So you are unaware of the rich history of changes in the document and understanding of what youth is. So that is, you're right. And I can only say, I think you're right.
No.
All right. Next. Equity and inclusion indicators. Now, just a quick. India is doing very badly, I think. All right. 172. That means equity and inclusion means how do we incorporate women into our youth with women, our disadvantaged groups among women, disability, etc. The whole thing. So let me give you a quick idea what the indicators there are. Gender differences in youth who are neither educated, nor employed, nor in training. And NEET, N-E-E-T. So what are the gender differences? How many girls, women, female youth are neither educated, nor employed, nor in training compared to men? Gender differences in safety and security. Alright? Who feels safe to travel outside at night, etc. Girls in comparison. Gender parity in literacy rate. What is the differences in literacy rate between boys and girls? Early marriage. When do both girls marry at an early age? When do men marry? At what age? And finally, what percentage of, and I think they're looking only at girls and boys, alright? And men and women, who are extremely poor and who are less poor. Alright, they're looking at the two poor this thing. So all these 4 indicators are merged together for this. Now, if we are to do here equity and inclusion, I would include many other groups, and that can be we can discuss all of that later. But this is what goes in. And for peace and security, next one. India fares not so well as China or USA, and it has 3 categories. Finally, yeah. This is the final category, which takes into account all the other categories, puts them together, gives them different weights. All right. For instance, education and employment opportunity get more weightage, all right, than the other 3. And India is 122 out of 181 countries, compared to China, which is halfway down, and compared to USA, which is worse off than China. Incidentally, China does better than even US. And 86. Now let me, and Indonesia is 88. Let me say something, because all of you you're quite young. When I was growing up, like when I was in America in the 60s, I remember Amartya Sen writing a famous article comparing India and China and saying who's doing better, alright? And this is, it's one of the most famous articles that has come out ever. Amartya Sen came out with the New York Times Review of Books. And he was comparing India and China and showing how almost on most categories we were equal. Alright? The only area which we were not equal was, and he was making the claim, India does much better feeding its poor, because unlike, and he was making, people die both in China and in India from malnutrition, from lack of food. But in China, you can get millions dying of food, but because they're not a democratic country, nobody knows about it. And he was writing with reference to the great starvation thing which occurred during the Cultural Revolution or before, in which it is estimated, nobody quite knows, between 20 to 30 million people died. That is, 20 to 30 million is more than the population of Pune, in the entire population of Pune. Alright? They died, and very few people in China knew about it, and nobody in the world knew about it until a few years later. Whereas he says in India, nothing like this can ever happen because we are a democracy. However, people are dying from starvation, but very slowly and very gradually, but not quite at the level of 30 million over here. So we are badly off, but our people are dying slowly, but we are all noticing it. That was the thing. Now, I don't think young people nowadays ever compare themselves with China, but China is the next most second big superpower, and we forget about how we did in our Olympic Games. But you ever look at what Asia Games, China will have won 3/4 of the medals in the Asia Games compared to any other country, and all the rest go to make up 1/4. So China, in 40 years or less, or 50 years, it has made up, it is super catapulted itself into the economic and social development. And now, look where it is in comparison to India. I'm just giving you, because I think some of you will not have a historic understanding. We will think that China has always been very good. It has never been that. It was a backward country years ago. Backward country exploited by foreigners forever. They exploited it, even from India they exploited it by sending opium to China and keeping a lot of the population drugged by opium. And quite a few of our Parsi industrialists whose ancestors made their fortunes on the opium trade. Interested in knowing about it, please read Amitabh Ghosh's books, a trilogy of books on the opium trade to China. And it describes how it moved from India to China. Next, now, I'm sorry, I'll take a little time. I don't mind, because partly because
foundation is very important.
Yeah, I'm more interested in whether you hear it. Or just understand it. And my impression looking at people is that I think most of you are understanding what I'm talking about. Next, what are the real major deficiencies? There is no mention in this document how large our youth population is. We have 370 million in India. Now, when in India, when we talk of millions, billions, crore, people look at these figures, and in England, in English, the expression is their eyes glaze over. They cannot, yeah, they don't pay any more attention. Million hai, kya hai far? Crore hai? Yeah, without understanding a crore is 10 million. Billion, ho sakte hai. As it's only 1,000 million. Now, you have to understand that 300 and, if we had a country, alright, called Yuva Bharat in the world, alright, and you took all our youth and put all our youth between 15 to 29 into that country, it would be the third largest country in the world. This is just to give you some idea of what the population is. That means China will be the largest, India with 1,300 million will be the largest, and the third largest will be India, with just our youth. Now, can you imagine a policy where, when you're reading it, are you talking about 1 million? Are you talking 50 lakhs? Are you know, I mean, if you're reading it with no idea for figures, you have no idea that you're talking about the third largest country in the world in terms of population size. Then, the youth, just the youth between who are not in education, not in employment, not in training, NEET youth, between 15 to 29 is 104 million students. That is, between 15, these will be 15, mostly 15 to 20, I meant it should be 15 to 24. Alright? Now, 15 to 24 would be larger in size than the equivalent age group of Indians who are enrolled in high school, higher secondary. Those in the age group 15 to 17, alright? And those who are in higher education who are this. That means more youth are neither employed nor in education nor in training than they are in the formal system of education. I'll come to this issue of numbers. You see, you have to, in English it says, you have to wrap your mind around numbers. You have to try and understand numbers, because when you are talking, even in your NGOs, when you are talking, you have to talk in numbers. कितना beneficiaries है, उसको क्या फायदा मिला है, हाँ? आपके सेंटर में कितने groups है, ये सब numbers है. So whether you're talking 20, 30, 50, or you're talking 50 million, or you're talking 50 lakhs, you must start understanding what these numbers mean. Alright? It's a little bit of, and it is not great statistics I'm asking you to understand. It is very simple understanding. And one way is to make some comparison with other countries or other states, etc. Now, what are the implications of not doing this? The National Youth Policy draft does not convey any idea of the numbers, so we have no understanding of what is this, what are we talking about? Why is it urgent that we do this work urgently before our youth starts, the dividend starts decreasing and we have no longer a youth dividend, and we have no understanding how to deal with various problems. And as I said before, our youth dividend is going to disappear in 3 decades. Next. Implications of no mention of enrollment data. And he said in none of those areas is there any enrollment given. So we are unable to say where are we, in what time will we increase our employment, what are the targets we are setting for each of these areas. And you cannot, the word is conceptualize, you cannot think of is conceptualizing a scheme without numbers. I mean, I cannot think, alright, that we must enroll in Pune municipal schools additional additional people, you have to say we have to enroll 10,000 students in the 200 PMC schools. What does that mean in the different areas of Pune city? Which schools will take what and by when? Okay, so so you cannot think of any scheme without these numbers. And when you in the national education policy, numbers are given for various schemes and targets. Finally, we cannot have programs for our disadvantaged groups, okay, without then data on poor, extremely poor, middle class. Which group of youth are we meeting? Which group are we meeting by caste? Alright? Which group are we meeting by religion? For instance, I think it will be too much if we spend our youth policy focusing mainly on Christians and Sikhs rather than Muslims, because Christians and Sikhs are normally far better off than Muslims. Okay? So prioritizing, but that would mean how much money are you spending on Christians and Sikhs, and how much money are you spending on Muslims? And that would be depending on what is the population of Muslims and youth and Sikhs and Christians in the total population. So this is where quantitative data becomes extremely important. Next. And I won't spend the same time on this, but there is very little attention given on the impact of the COVID-19 on the pandemic. Throughout the document, NYP, the National Youth Policy, there is mention of the impact of the document. But it is very straight remark. Please read the Global Youth Development Report because it has 4 pages on the impact of COVID-19 on youth, and it divides this in three places. Youth development in the time of pandemic, the key findings. Second, being young during a pandemic. And third, youth development post-COVID. There are 4 pages in the report devoted entirely to it. It has other comments on COVID and pandemic throughout the report, but it has 4 pages. And I would think those who are working in the field would get a lot of understanding of the impact of COVID-19 on the youth that you are working with. Finally, next. There is absolutely limited financial data. At the end of the report, Matthew, you may remember, there's a reference to how many thousand crores we spend, which I have no understanding. You know, when someone says we spend 5,000 crores on
2,200 crores.
Yeah, 200, what 63,000 crores. But then I had no idea. Is that too little or is that too much? Alright? I mean, 63,000 crores would be too much if you've got 63,000 people. Okay? 1 crore per person, I think that's a lot. But if you have so many more crores of people, then 63 crores, 1,000 crores is very little. So, however, if you look at the national education policy, we have draft policy, we have 22 pages devoted just to funding. Next.
Well, the irony is that
please go
in
ahead.
the youth policy, they have taken the funding for education part of the youth policy. That means they are saying that out of 99,000 crore they are spending for education policy, a good chunk is for youth. Therefore, we are spending in youth policy. So that overlap is there, taking that education fund into the youth policy.
So
And in reality, the government is spending only 2,200 crores, and out of that means only 32 rupees per youth in the country, maybe 2 vada pav.
Okay. Good. I always like this 2 vada pav example. Because that actually gives an idea what 32 rupees means. Alright? So 2 vada pavs, good example. Now, next. And this comes to where I am coming from. I mentioned this before. The whole process, we are completely invisible, the process. That means, how much time, who was part of it, what were the consultative processes involved in developing the 2021 NEP. Now, if you know about the national education policy, though I was extremely critical of it, one thing is they spent 5 years trying to develop it, and they had a lot of consultations before it. Just because you have consultation won't make the policy better. It's good, but it may make it better. Okay? So, and we have no idea what are the next steps. Is the next step another national youth policy? Because the draft national education policy had 2 major revisions. One was when Mr. Subramaniam, the T.S. Subramaniam draft national education policy, which was a few years ago. And the next policy, which came out in 2019, which was Professor Kasturirangan committee, which did a policy. And then after that we got the final policy. In this draft national, we have no idea what the next steps are, because they closed the comments in less than 3 months. And you please look at the comments. All kinds of people are writing, I think it's a good policy, you should look at Falana A, or you should look at Falana B. There's something called a Rorschach test in psychology. Psychology Rorschach test is they give you various cue cards, which are little blobs, little pieces of paint, and they give it to you, and you're supposed to immediately say what is there, all right? And then at the end of doing for 25, they will tell you what your psychological profile is. Here, this 2021, and asking for comments is like a Rorschach test. Anybody, Nitin, Marquis, Matthew, Anthony, Kurien, anybody who feels I am youth, or I have been a youth in my life, alright? Maybe kuch likhunga, and immediately kuch comment there. That is the main type of comment on it. There are some more thoughtful comments, but the main type of few comments are like that. Finally, next one. Now comes the more important thing. Please, as I was saying, the youth in this country is larger, much larger than those who are enrolled in the formal systems of education in our country. And for those children who are in our formal system of school and higher education, we have departments of school education, and you can go to the Department of School Education and look at their website, and you will get figures, and you go to Department of Higher Education, and you go to the DICE data, and you go to the All India Survey of Higher Education data, and you go to various data provided from the website. You can go to various other data, various other reports, both on infrastructure, enrollment, teachers, etc., financing, name it, it's there. At the central level. At the state level, there is the Department of Education in Maharashtra, in every state. Then there are SCRTs, State Council of Educational Research and Training. Then there are diets at the district level. So all of these bodies, at the center we have NCRT and NUPA, which is the academic wing of the ministry. So that provides academic support, research support. At the state level, you have both implementing support, training support, and academic support. But for a group which is larger in size than the thing, none of this is available in any one place. To become an instant expert like me, as I told you before, I had to go to look at international publications in the main to get most of it. Though there is a very good publication produced by CYDA on on the promise of the youth dividend and how if we don't do it in the next 3 decades, we are in bad shape. There are a lot of other, yes please.
Last June 28th, Government of India published a document, Youth in India, that report is called as Youth in India, that is published by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation.
When did you do? June?
June 28th.
Well,
And it has a long list of all statistics, including the education institutions and all the data related to youth, but it was not taken into consideration for the youth policy.
Yeah. So
that's a different department.
Thank you for informing me, because there is no problem, providing statistics, but not incorporating it in an analysis of what our challenges are, what do we need to do, and where do we need to go. Now, next. I want to frame this whole discussion is that I think in India, since independence, we have not taken the issue of youth development seriously at all. If you look at all our discussions, and look, I put myself in the category of those who have not taken youth development seriously at all, even though I am professionally in the field of education for decades. And I read in the field of education quite widely, and I write in the field of education quite widely. However, it's only recently, because I had to read it because I was writing a report on Muslims, that I started appreciating how important the age group is. But the only thing I can say is, in English there's a saying, better late than never. So I've come to it very late in my life, but I intend to do something about it. What that something is very different. Now, so we need to really understand this, and our reflection of our understanding of this is at the central level, that we have only had, as far as there were some youth policies before, and the earlier youth policy was 2014, and now we have that we do not have a department of youth development. We have something called Youth Affairs and Sports. Now you go to Youth Affairs and Sports, and you will to the website and you will find no information. This information that you have said was not there on the Youth Affairs and the SIG website. I am unclear what these people do. They have a few schemes which are there, which are in Delhi, few schemes which go across certain states. But they have they have nothing like what is done for education, which I explained in the previous slide. They have no information, they have no academic support, they have something at the state level. There are departments here. So I would suggest that you have, and right now I looked at the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. I think sports will do extremely well with a separate department, and youth will have a separate department if you call it youth development and not affairs. In English, affairs means, affairs means a variety of things, including things which I cannot talk about right now. Alright? So affairs has other connotations, and I think we take it as seriously as we take affairs of various kinds. Alright, youth. So,
Kurien sir, adding to this, in Karnataka also, the state department is was called as Youth Service and Sports Department. As a recommendation of 2012 Youth Policy of the state, department name has been changed now as Youth Empowerment and Sports.
Very good. Very good. No, I'm all for youth empowerment and
Sports.
sport.
Yeah.
What I am saying is
Separate.
youth empowerment. And you'll do better if you have youth empowerment only, and you'll do better if you have youth sports, not youth sports, sports only. Alright? You want to win Olympic medal? You serious? I mean, it's too late. Alright? You need to start thinking of having a proper department devoted to sports, which then looks at the entire gamut of sports, going to children, to youth, to older. Alright? And youth, we will have an entire department, alright, with academic support, alright, and it is they who will, alright, and it will take at least 2 or 3 years for reorganizing this, okay, and to understand a roadmap. You need considerable rethinking needed if you want to reorganize it. You need a good dynamic minister, alright, you need some real critical thinking, and this is where I think organizations like you are much more familiar with the NGO and think tanks who are working in youth, and all of you who are here. I think you all have a great thing to start urging that we get rid of this, because merely providing recommendations to this youth affairs department.
Last 30 years, we have been pushing for a separating sports and development. And there's also another thing. The sports, they are only talking about the larger sports like cricket and hockey federation and sports of the India. The sports is not coming down to the grassroots, and they're larger kind of. I don't know whether India can ever dream of getting into, larger medal winning in Olympics. When look at the population in Pune, how many sports grounds are there for the children to play? I think it's a larger issue, but for the children playing is not important. Building flats are important.
But if you see, my thing is, we must think when we're talking policy, we must think in immediate and in decades. Right? There is immediate short-term thinking, and there is long-term thinking. And sometimes we must really reflect on very fundamental issues. I have given implicitly various recommendations, but I do not think that these recommendations for implementation will actually happen with such a limited department in terms of people, in terms of power, and most important, in terms of knowledge. Their knowledge base is totally deficient because they have no supporting institutions or no supporting.
Not only that, the irony.
And I am saying that, sorry, 1 minute, and that you require this at the state level, because you need to have state plans along this, and you need to have district plans. And this is where I think that organizations, whether you come from the Hyderabad and things like that, you can start a little bit thinking along those lines. The more academically inclined and the more university people you involve in your organization, etc., who can give you that data, that you also think in terms of district plans for you. And you already have existing indicators already there, except that you won't get it from the Department of Youth Affairs. You'll have to get it yourself. Maybe you go to the Global Youth Development Index, ILO, UNESCO, you'll get or World Bank, you may get the data. Anyway, I want to stop. I've gone way over my time.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer any
questions. Yeah, time is ready. We'll take questions, 2-3 questions. Then I just want to tell you one thing. Something which is alarming is that the equity issue. I think we need to delve a little other discussion on that. That if India is 176 after 183 countries in terms of equity, and we can imagine. I don't know all these discussions. I think that is what we need to. Thank you very much for bringing entire kind of a picture. Major challenge is again the issue of NEET And if we have 11.5 million population is neither in education nor in employment nor in training.
100.
And then
15
crores, sorry, 11 crores in almost 10% of the India's population, or at 8% of India's population. It is true. It is true. Then you look into the unemployment rate, which is almost 43% among the youth, though it is 7.5% overall among the youth. And this time it is matching with that. I don't know what are we going to do with that 11 crores? Yeah, with youth, and where will they go? I think this discussion has given us a kind of a foundation. Maybe next 3-4 deliberations हमारे लिए बहुत अच्छा होगा. हम आगे क्या फोकस करने के बारे में कुछ क्वेश्चंस है तो ले लेंगे.
I have one more question. Before I leave people, I don't know whether you are depressed or you are charged to do something about it, but I should say that between 2010 and 2017, the Youth Development Index in India increased from some amount, it went positively up. So that we have been improving in our work with youth, despite all that I have said.
No, I have my own doubt. In 2019 Global Index, we were 133. Okay, 133 position, overall 181. Now we have become 122. 11 step, एक साल में कैसे improve किया हमको भी मालूम है वो कोविड के time. So the statistic, this improvement also we need to question. That's a different issue.
More than the rank, we should see the score, because rank is always depends on the other country's performance.
Yeah.
So always
The score.
we go.
Yeah, the score, we were 133 out of
No, there is a
ranking. That is, we also need to look how we improved up, right?
Matthew, I just say quickly, the global, I just want to leave it with some optimism. Global Youth Development Index said that India was one of the few countries which increased significantly in the last 4 years. Alright? Now, I have no idea what the reliability and validity of all these statistics are, but it is the only statistics that is there. And so, these are international statistics produced by reasonably credible organizations.
Yeah, that's but India also come out with the Indian Youth Development Index 2019 by Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, SIPL. They also come with the first Indian Youth Development Index. That's a very huge, but the problem is that this Global Youth Development Index is पढ़ने के लिए आसान है, तो इतना एक बड़ा डॉक्यूमेंट है, समझना बहुत मुश्किल है. Indian Development
Development?
Yeah, Indian Youth Development Index. Indian Youth Development.
Yeah.
Index
We added 1 or 2 more parameters.
We're both, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Any question? We can go for a chai and come for the first plenary session.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, understanding that early childhood care and education, I also strongly believe is very important, and as per neuroscience, which talks that majority of the brain develops in that age. How do we look at that area and youth? Because if a child is getting developed in the early stages of life, and we are looking towards youth development, and especially those vulnerable categories which are not seen in the ECCED sector and youth, how do we bring that? Or as civil society organizations, can organizations working on this aspect and working on youth combine and work something that can.
Okay. Now I'm going to answer it in a slightly matlabi way, but that's a separate issue. See, working with youth in development is 15 to 29. Quite a lot of these youth will have been married. Quite a lot of them will have had children. So, when you are talking of birth to 3, the development of birth to 3, you are basically talking of the education of parents as caregivers. You are basically talking of making sure that these young couple, both man and woman, know what it takes to give optimally for the optimal development of children in that age. What do you need to do for health? health checkups, injections, vaccination. What do you need to do for nutrition? When do you breastfeed till? When do you stop breastfeeding? All these are actually youth development issues dealing with the well-being of their children, dealing with their well-being, but their well-being, health and well-being as parents. Okay, not their health, but their health and well-being as parents. So, and incidentally, Center for Learning Resources, where I was director and founder. From 2000, we have been working in Maharashtra and in northern states and in Karnataka, educate with NGOs, educating NGOs who are working in the field on what to do, how to train parents and caregivers. Alright? Caregivers means grandparents also. On what can they do at home for the optimal development of their infants, birth to 3. And very important, this is where it comes a little thing. What do you do with the development of adolescent girls? Because if adolescent girls don't get proper care and nutrition, they get underweight children, there are all kinds of other problems. So all these problems are very interconnected. And I'm glad you brought this. It's also glad you gave me an opportunity to tell you what Center for Learning Resources does in the birth to 3 age group. Now, and there are others who are doing it. Alright? And let me say, this simply doesn't mean सिर्फ वैक्सीनेशन देने चाहिए और सिर्फ खाना अच्छा तरह से खाना देने चाहिए. More important, as important is how do you interact with the baby from birth, almost as soon as they are born, till they are 3 years old. What is the interaction at all times between parents and the little child?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kurien. And I think it was quite inspiring and keep a real focus on youth. And I'm sure that आगे का जो 4-5 plenaries है, focusing on same thing, development to education, skilling and inclusion. So we'll get much more deeper understanding. And मुझे लगता है this opening session will open up to many more questions and discussion. So thank you very much for this fantastic session. Let's go down for a tea and come back immediately.
Very well. Thank you.